Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. I was on a plane. I was flying to Uganda for a Christian mission trip with 10 strangers. Picture this. 10 white as snow Christian missionaries. And in the middle, me. Brown as bread. The whole grain kind, obviously. I felt all eyes were on me, asking, what is she doing with them? I started wondering, do I belong here? Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests, though this trip started with a little self-doubt, it ended up being one of the most transformative and treasured experiences of my life. On this trip, I learned the power of loving beyond labels. How our lives can be transformed if we are just willing to welcome people into them, irrespective of our differences. Let me give you a little backstory. I sponsor a couple of kids in Uganda, and my friend's family was organizing a mission trip to there. They knew, so they emailed me and asked if I wanted to send anything. I replied with the very, very obvious response, "Can I come instead?" They weren't planning on taking this big a shipment, but they let me come along. When I came back, friends and family greeted me with lots of love and questions. Two of those questions stood out and stuck with me. Why did you go on a Christian mission trip? Why didn't you go help out in India instead? The first question was raised because I'm not a Christian by religion. The second question was raised because, if you can't tell, which I know you can by my accent and the constant head bobbing, I'm from India. Some of my friends thought I should have first given back to my own country of origin. To be honest, I didn't know the answers at first. But after some introspection, I realized it didn't matter. My mind didn't label them as Ugandans or Christians. My mind labeled them as children in need. As adults, we have been trained to label people based on some set of common traits. Sometimes it's looks, country, color, religion, language, sex, and so on. I admit, I've been guilty of this before. When the car pulled into Uganda in the orphanage for the first time, I hung back, nervously and timidly. I expected someone to call me out, to ask me to explain my presence amongst a group that I clearly didn't belong to. I was seeing myself with my own adulterated lens. Right then, a group of children came running towards me. One jumped into my lap, two tugged at my skirt, and one held my hand tightly and said, "Tukusan Yukide." I didn't know what it meant, but he meant welcome. With one simple word, he had opened his world to me, where it didn't matter that I looked any different than the rest of them. Throughout the trip, I realized there were so many different ways that the children in Uganda could have labeled me. Indian, like the shopkeeper who wouldn't give them free food even though they were visibly starving. Privileged, like the bullies they encountered in school. Women, like some of their mothers who had abandoned them. Adult, like some of the people who had abused them. But instead, they chose to love me and embrace me for who I am, and that allowed me to love them back. Now more than ever, we need to learn from these children how to let go of our biases, how to respect our differences, and how to love beyond labels. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, look around you, acknowledge any labels that you're forming in your head, and drop them so that when you leave this room today, the only label you take with you is that of a friend. Except for the anonymous judges. Feel free to label me as a winner. I was on a plane, flying back from Uganda, sitting with 10 people who felt more like family than anything. I asked myself, do I belong here? And the answer was loud and clear. I did. We meet all sorts of people in our lives, some quite different than us. But let's not allow our differences and labels to keep us from welcoming each other and loving each other. Ladies and gentlemen, Tukun Sanyuki Day.